You're in love with me.
So hey guys, sorry this review is a lot later than I planned. Just had a really crazy busy weekend at work, and finally got around to reviewing this movie for you. So as you can tell by that opening song, or in case you didn't, I am reviewing Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 for you today. Um, this is kind of the first 2017 summer movie. You know, it starts the summer movie lineup and everything. Usually the first Friday in May does this. But in this movie, you guys, let's just get right to the point because I know you probably want to know how I felt about the movie. In Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Star-Lord and his Guardians, they're still roaming the galaxy. They're still, trying to figure out what exactly the Guardians of the Galaxy is, what they're going to do. Are they heroes? Are they anti-heroes? What exactly are the Guardians? But along the way, they meet a man that claims to be Peter Quill's father. That's Star-Lord's real name. So they meet his real father. And so they're trying to figure out, what exactly has this guy been up to? How come he waited this long to finally talk to Peter about certain things? How come he, didn't stay in touch with Peter? How come he wasn't there when the mother passed away in the first movie? So there's all these questions that Star-Lord has for this guy. And he, has tons of questions on his mind. And so throughout the course of the movie, this man's name is Ego, and he has his own planet in space. And he offers Peter Quill an opportunity to basically become a quote-unquote better person. And so what this would require to do is for Peter to leave the Guardians and to pursue this opportunity with Ego if Peter were to go through with this. And so as the film progresses and he finds out what's really going on, why Ego is really offering this opportunity to Star-Lord, Peter has to make big choices. He figures out more things about his father, maybe things that he wish he didn't have to learn about him and stuff like that. So Peter has a lot of options, and he really has to figure out how important is the Guardians of the Galaxy to him, and is this opportunity to be with his father for a really, really long time that important where he would have to leave the Guardians in order to pursue this opportunity. So overall, guys, I really liked Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 a lot. I didn't like it as much as the first film. I don't think it's the best Marvel film by any means. Definitely very far away from their worst films, I think. I think a lot of people are, for the most part, going to really like this movie. It definitely continues the things I liked about the first Guardians of the Galaxy quite a bit, while also ignoring a little bit of things that maybe the first film had that this new film creates that are new flaws that it runs into. But let's get around to these positives and negatives I had about Guardians 2. So overall, I liked how this film had some in-depth character development. Gamora and Nebula alone, you find out a lot about the two of them, why the two of them are kind of really jumpy around each other, why they're not super comfortable around each other, even being sisters and everything. So they go over that. They go over something that makes you kind of hate Thanos more than you already did before going into this movie. So that definitely sets up when we eventually run into Thanos in an Avengers film. It kind of is going to make us hate him a little bit more, which I think is good, since that's kind of one of the bigger villains of the Marvel universe, if you ask me. So a lot of in-depth character development. We learned a lot about Star-Lord, a little bit more about Rocket Raccoon, a little bit more about Yondu. Drax, not so much. Obviously, the thing with Star-Lord we learned about is things about with his dad and so forth. So a lot of in-depth character development I thought really helped this movie and really helped me care about these characters even more. There's also a new character that was added into this story that was not in the first film. Her name is Mantis. I thought she was a very funny character. She kind of had the thing for Drax over the course of this movie. She's like very attracted to him. She kind of smiles like this, and she does like little goofy little characteristics that I think are just really funny. And she's very open, and she doesn't quite understand the idea of beauty and being ugly. And Drax kind of plays around with this a lot, and it's very funny. So the character of Mantis, very, very funny. Says a lot of things about like Star-Lord and Gamora that I also think are really funny in this movie. So the character of Mantis, a very funny addition to the Marvel universe as far as Guardians of the Galaxy is concerned. James Gunn also kind of continues his special touch from the first film. So if you like that kind of unique dialogue with, campy B-list sci-fi mixed with high-budget Marvel action movies. That very much style and tone is continued here, and I think for those who really like that in the first Guardians of the Galaxy film, he continues this in the second film as well. So I really like how James Gunn is continuing his own visual style within Guardians of the Galaxy and bringing us into the Marvel Universe even more. The inclusion of Baby Groot I thought was very adorable. I kind of like the character of Groot better in baby form than I do in regular form, so that just goes to show that I like this character a little bit better in this form. He's funnier. He's given really cute things to do. I like how characters have to explain certain things to him that he doesn't quite understand because he's just a little baby tree, pretty much. So I thought that was funny. So I liked how Baby Groot added an additional form of humor that Groot didn't add to the first film. I thought the character of Ego was pretty interesting for the most part. I would say more so in the first half of this movie. I was more intrigued by him. Um, it's one of those characters where the more I was learning about him, the more I was kind of intrigued by him and what he was doing. I'm going to get to something in my negatives about him that I can't quite get to yet. But let's just say in the first half, he's more interesting than how he's handled in the second half of the movie. I also like how this film sets up bigger Marvel movie elements. It definitely sets up some things we're probably going to see in Avengers 3 and things that we're probably going to see in other Marvel films that take place in space like this. I wouldn't be shocked if Captain Marvel has elements of this film that are going to be included in that film eventually when that comes out. So I like how this film's setting up even bigger Marvel movie elements. It also introduces the Watchers, which I know are pretty big in the comics as well. For my negatives of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, once you kind of find out what Ego is up to, I can't get into too much detail on this one because it is spoiler territory. But what I will say is, once you kind of find out the big reveal of this character, what he's really up to, I kind of lost interest in him, and that's kind of where, in my positives of the movie, I mentioned that I liked him in the first half of the movie. In the second half of the movie, when you find out what he's up to, when you kind of find out what his motivation is for doing certain things, I kind of lost interest in him, and he kind of became a boring, generic character that we see in not only superhero films but just in every film in general. I just thought it was a very, very weak motivation. So I just kind of lost interest in the character of Ego in the second half of this movie, and I just didn't care about him after a while. Another negative I have with the movie is I thought there was a lot of hit and miss jokes. There's a lot of jokes that work really, really well in this film, and there's other jokes where you can tell they're trying to be funny. And I could just tell in the audience I was in that there were some people who were laughing and some people were just like, well, what was that? So there's some jokes in here where either really, really hits or really doesn't hit. So for those who want a movie that's completely funny all the way through, I personally thought that some of the jokes felt a little flat. I also thought there was a need for more action scenes in this movie. There's so much emphasis on comedy in this movie to the point where there's just not enough action scenes. Really at the beginning and at the end and a little bit in the middle there's some action scenes, but there's just not enough of them to say it's an official Marvel movie, really. There's just not enough of them. And I really feel like people who are going to go into this movie are going to want more action scenes than comedy scenes. And unfortunately, we get more comedy scenes than action scenes in this movie. I also thought that there was a lot of moments in this movie where either the tone was way too different from what we're used to or way too generic for its own good. So I really would have preferred if James Gunn would have used his special touch during the entire movie. Because like I said, there were some scenes that felt way too different from what we're used to and way too generic and run-of-the-mill that I think we kind of all moved away from in the Marvel Universe. So I would have preferred more scenes that didn't feel so generic. Also, I thought there was a subplot in this movie that regarded Rocket Raccoon stealing from a group of gold people in space. And whenever the gold people are around, whenever they get a lot of screen time in the movie, I was very uninterested in them. I just really didn't care about them. I thought their jokes fell flat once again. Just really uninteresting characters. Really would have preferred if James Gunn would have used more interesting characters for us for a subplot than the characters that he used here, which were these gold people that I really didn't care about too much. But overall, I'm going to give Volume 2 of Guardians of the Galaxy an 8.5 out of 10. It's a very strong movie. It continues the things that you loved about the first Guardians of the Galaxy film. But like I said, once you find out what Ego is up to, some of the jokes are a little bit hit and miss in this movie. I really thought this film could have used more action scenes. A lot of moments felt either too different or too generic for their own good. And for the subplot of this movie, I would have preferred somebody more interesting than these gold people for a subplot villain. So overall, 8.5 out of 10 for me. I highly recommend Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, but go into this movie knowing that it's not as good as the first film.